In this video, we'll be covering over the feud between John Veasey and John Chang Ciancaglini. Both of these men have grew up in South Philadelphia in a predominant Italian neighborhood. And when they have crossed paths, many people have questioned their relationship and the dynamic. And now we will be breaking down both the history of these men, and there you can see the parallel histories between them. Let's start with John Veasey. John Veasey was born on May 15, 1966. As we mentioned before, he was born in South Philadelphia in a predominant family. He had an estranged relationship with his father, but had a warm relationship with his mother. He was the youngest child of his parents, and they had 5 children. And as the baby, you'd think he'd be spoiled, but he, along with his siblings, had grew up in the very rough, mean streets of South Philadelphia. His mother had sold crystal meth out of our family's bakery. By his mid-teens, he was a junkie and the father of 2 by his early 20s. And he had been arrested for more than 60 times. However, John Veasey did not really have inspiration to join the mafia until he met a special member of the Cosa Nostra to start a payday for $10,000 to put on a hit. Now that man will be Frank Martinez, who John Veasey had offered to pay him to put out his very first contract on a broad daylight that will occur in a future story that we will cover soon. Now we need to get to John Ciancaglini. John Ciancaglini, just like Veasey, also was born in Philadelphia on October 5, 1955, and he had royal mob ties in his blood. Son of Joseph Chicky Ciancaglini, who was a respected criminal underworld figure and had worked with Nicky Scarfo as the mob capo for several years and was a very legitimate tough guy. Many people describe him as strong as an ox and a very lovable personality. Joseph Chicky Ciancaglini was a real legitimate tough guy, and he was known for having 3 sons and will all be respected figures in the Philadelphia public. His oldest son will be John Ciancaglini, also known as Johnny Chang. His middle son would bear his name, Joseph Joey Chang Ciancaglini Jr., and then his youngest, Michael Ciancaglini, better known as Mikey Chang. And all of Joseph Ciancaglini's sons will be known as the Chang brothers, or the Ciancaglini brothers, whichever you prefer to say. John Ciancaglini grew up alongside his younger brothers, Joey and Michael. From a young age, they all engaged in the criminal activities with their childhood friend, Joseph Skinny Joey Merlino. Following in the footsteps of his father, John Ciancaglini began extorting local drug dealers on behalf of the crime family, being arrested in 1988 and sentenced to several years in prison. During his stint in custody, the mob became embroiled in an internal conflict which created a split between the Ciancaglini brothers, with Joey joining boss John Stanfa, whose real name is Giovanni Stanfa, while Michael remained loyal to his friend Joseph Merlino and his rebellion faction. So on one hand, you have Joe Ciancaglini Jr. siding with John Stanfa against the rebellious team that's led by Joseph Merlino and Michael Ciancaglini. Therefore, there has become an eternal conflict war within the Philadelphia crime family. However, John Ciancaglini is not in this picture, as he and his father are already in prison for other different criminal activities. Meanwhile, his siblings are at war in the 1990s while he and his father were in prison. On March 2nd, 1993, at the Warford Luncheon Express, Joseph Ciancaglini was opening up his restaurant at 6:30 a.m. and gunmen, as you can see in the footage, have shown up and gunned him down.
Look closely. You are witnessing a mob hit in progress. 3 hitmen are entering this Philadelphia diner armed with handguns. As the gunmen leave, they take one last look at their victim, who lies bleeding on the floor. Then they jump in a waiting car. No one is ever charged, but everyone agrees it was a mob hit.
Joseph Ciancaglini Jr. survives, but he's permanently incapacitated. Word on the street was many people suspect that it was the rival faction that was led by Joey Merlino, and the allegations have been soaring even to this day, but Merlino and none of his entourage has never been convicted for that shooting. In the following months, on August 5th, 1993, 5 months later after the shooting of Joseph Ciancaglini Jr., on 6th and Catherine Street, Joseph Skinny Joy Merlino and Mikey Chang Ciancaglini were minding their business outside the club of a social diner on 6th and Catherine. Unbeknownst to them, as they were minding their business, two gunmen are doing a drive-by shooting. First, the gunman had hesitated and drove around when he witnessed that his brother was a part of the conversation between Merlino and Ciancaglini. So they circled back around until they realized that the other member was gone. And the next thing you know, as the car stopped and pulled, Joseph Merlino and Michael Ciancaglini were gunned down, shot multiple times from a drive-by shooting. At the time of this news, this would become a big media sensation in the South Philadelphia region, creating big hostile tensions and making people concerned about their safety in the roar of South Philadelphia. Joseph Skinny Joy Merlino took a shot to the buttocks, while Michael Ciancaglini had tried to cover his face, but however he was shot through the arm that led towards his heart, and Michael Ciancaglini was mortally wounded. Joy Merlino had accompanied his friend and tried to get him into a hospital as best as he could while battling his own injuries. However, he did not know that his own friend would die within his arms minutes apart. The gunmen eventually were become informants, and they were working underneath the Stanfa regime. The driver turned informant was Philip Coletti, and the shooter would also be an informant, and that was John Veasey, following the orders of their boss, John Stanfa, and this would become the contract that John Stanfa had ordered on the price of Merlino for retaliation for the shooting that happened to Joseph Ciancaglini Jr. The person who introduced John Veasey to the Philadelphia crime family was Frank Martinez, and Frank Martinez was the acting underboss under John Stanfa once Joseph Ciancaglini Jr. was no longer able to fulfill that role. So Frank Martinez replaced Joseph Ciancaglini Jr. and therefore offered the contract to John Veasey under the orders of John Stanfa, which will be the firepower. John Veasey, on an interview with 60 Minutes, said that when Frank Martinez gave him the proposition, he was supposed to be $10,000 for the pay hit that occurred on Merlino and Ciancaglini. However, he never received the money. And when John Veasey had been vocal towards his boss, John Stanfa, that did not sit well with John Stanfa. This time he put a hit on John Veasey.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more of our content. Feel free to give your feedback and suggestions on what we should do next in the comments. This is Infinite Lee Productions. We love ya.